see me better. All these people.
Oh, I recognise me.
Yeah, recognise him, Jane?
Hi everybody, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We have Rachael Johns and Fiona Palmer in conversation this evening discussing Fiona's book Tiny White Lies. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which I am currently broadcasting to you from, the Yagara and Turrbal people. I pay my respects to elders past and present and acknowledge that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. Before I hand over to our speakers this evening, I'd just first like to reiterate a couple of things that were mentioned in the email that you were sent with your link to join tonight. You've all automatically been placed on mute and you'll remain so throughout the event, but I'll unmute you at the end so that you can join me in thanking Rachael and Fiona for tonight's discussion. In the meantime, Fiona's keen to answer your questions during a Q&A session towards the end of this event. So please send them through to me using the chat box. If you can't see it, then you can find the button to open it towards the bottom left of your screen. If you type your questions there, then they'll come straight through to me and I'll read them out for Fiona to answer once I'm prompted to do so. So I'd also like to mention that this evening we have a special offer on for everybody who attends our event. So if you use the code EVENT at checkout, then you'll receive 10% off all books ordered on our website this evening. It's valid for 24 hours and I'll be posting the link to purchase Tiny White Lies as soon as I've handed over to Rachael and Fiona. So make sure that you follow that link and use it to grab your copies now and make the most of that discount. So I would now like to introduce Fiona Palmer. Before becoming an author, Fiona was a speedway driver for 7 years and now spends her days writing both women's and young adult fiction, working as a farmhand and caring for her 2 children in the tiny rural community of Pingering, 350 kilometres from Perth. The books Fiona's passionate readers know and love contain engaging storylines, emotions and hearty characters. Her novels are consistently top 10 national bestsellers. In conversation with Fiona tonight is Rachael Johns. Rachael is the best-selling ABIA-winning author of The Patterson Girls and a number of other romance and women's fiction books, including the recent bestseller Something to Talk About. Rachael is currently Australia's leading writer of contemporary relationship stories around women's issues, a genre she has coined Life Lit, and has been shortlisted for many awards, including the Australian Romance Readers Awards. So Fiona and Rachael, I'll now hand over to you both.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Emma Kate, and thank you to Avid Reader for having us. I will not talk lots, which is something I'm not very good at doing, and get into these questions about Fiona's fabulous new book. Whoops, I'm showing it upside down. See, I'm really great at this stuff. Yep, Fiona's got the final version. I have the advanced reading copies. That's why I've got a yellow line across the top. She's got the beautiful final shiny cover there of Tiny White Lies. Now it's only been out a couple of days. Is that right, Fiona? 2 days?
28th, is that yesterday? Gosh,
I
it's...
don't even know.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, it's 2 days. So, you know, it's still appearing in shops and stuff, but I was lucky enough to read it in the past school holidays on a houseboat, which was pretty cool. And I think one of the good things about reading on a houseboat is that I was kind of, well, we didn't have there's issues in here. One of them is about technology and kids on screens, which we'll get to. And my kids were terribly upset about being on the houseboat, well, my older ones, for a couple of days because I didn't let them have their screens. Well, as soon as the charge left their phones, that was it. So I was actually experiencing the wrath of the kids at the beginning while I was reading Tiny White Lies. I might just read the blurb quickly and then I'll ask you a question. So the blurb for Tiny White Lies is, for 3 weeks, 2 families escaped the rat race in a remote coastal camp with no phone reception. Ashley has recently lost her husband. Daughter Emily is being bullied online. Best friend Nikki is holding a huge secret. And why is husband Chris receiving so many text messages lately? Their teenage children are glued to technology, be it PlayStation, YouTube, Instagram, Snapchat. While the teenagers struggle to embrace this new world of self-entertaining in a rugged bushland, the adults are trying to maintain a certain facade. Soon, around the flames of the campfire, their tiny white lies might just begin to be exposed. Very hooky and, what's the word? It's curious. Well, I can't think of the right word. You're the one that has to do the words tonight. So I thought we'd start at the beginning though. Can you tell us a little bit about how you first got into writing novels?
All by accident, really. Not being very good at English and leaving school early after year 11, writing books was sort of not on my radar. But I did enjoy writing stories. I found one not long ago that I'd written in year 11, and I just remember how much joy it had brought. And, I'd written out a plan, a synopsis for the whole book, how it was going to go. And I'd have had a ball doing that, but because, my teacher was more focused on the spelling and the grammar, I never thought about taking it any further. And it wasn't until I'd had both my children and I was very busy that I started dreaming up another story. And it got to a point where I just started writing it out, typing it out just to get it out of my mind. And 3 years later, I ended up with a finished book, more or less.
That's cool. I mean, and what's really amazing about that story, I think, as someone who was an English teacher briefly, and so I think English teaching has a lot to answer for sometimes, in that we do, focus on the things that when you get out in the big wide world, of course, grammar and spelling matter, but in terms of story, what matters more is the author's voice and the characters and the plot and what's going on, and you can fix the other things. So I think yours is a really inspiring story, that if you've got a story to tell, don't let things like technique and stuff stop you from putting pen to paper, because, as you said, you finished school early, you didn't do English. A lot of people think, oh, do you need to have an English writing degree to become an author? And you're a perfect example of the fact that, no, you can be a successful author without having any of those things. So, but I should know this. I should have done my research better. What number book is this for you? Do you know? Maths,
yes,
strong point.
16, I think. 16 if you include my 4 YA books.
Okay, so you've written 16 books, 4 YAs, in sort of like, what do you call that, the action-packed genre? I don't know,
something like that, yeah, action
YA books. They're very, the concept of them, if anyone wants to have a look, I'm sure you can go to Fiona's website. They're quite a different, unique concept. And then you really got your start in rural romance, which I'm sure everybody knows what rural romance is, but for anyone who doesn't, basically it's romances set in rural Australia. And that's because I guess you started writing what you knew, would you say? Well,
that's it. I mean, what drove me to write in the first place, or to create that very first story, was my passion for where I live and my way of life and my dreams, and all of that sort of inspired me to put pen to paper. And I think if I wasn't that driven and that passionate about what I was writing, and because I knew what I was writing about, I lived it, I experienced it, I put all of that in the book, that's sort of what began the whole writing career.
I guess often as writers, or as aspiring writers, we're told either to write what you know. Well, that's a bit of advice that different people are often given. Write what you know when you're starting out, because, that's supposedly easier. But also I have heard, and I believe more, is write what you love or what you want to know. And I guess that really write what you love came out definitely in your earlier novels. So why you branched out then into general fiction, and that's what Tiny White Lies is, although it is set quite a lot in a rural community, or even not even the community, it's set in a rural location, but we're mostly on a farm where there's only a few people there. Can you tell us a bit about Tiny White Lies? What is the story to you? I've read the blurb, but what's the story to you, and how does it differ from your rural romances?
In a way, I enjoyed writing this story because, it's personal. It was my 2 teenage kids and having phones and the whole, what they have access to, that sort of drove the original idea for the story. And our trips to Bremer every January, for school holidays, is the one time the kids really get to reconnect. They sit around the fire, they talk to you, they're not on the phones all the time, and they actually get to, play with their cousins and actually be kids. And I love that. So another reason I set it in Bremer, because, that's sort of our escape, and such a beautiful setting. And, being in WA, we have so many wonderful places. I love to try and showcase them as well, and you know, hopefully inspire people to venture down to Bremer, enjoy a bit of relaxation by the beach.
And that is where you are now, isn't it? This very moment. Is that right?
Yeah, because there's a competition. When you buy the book, you can enter to win a weekend here at Bremer Bay at this gorgeous house, which is like right on a cliff face, and you can just, all you can see is water. I don't know if you can see out my window here, but out the doors there, I mean,
oh, beautiful.
this ocean.
For those people who aren't in WA, and we've got the restrictions at the moment for obvious reasons, is there a time limit on the competition?
I can't remember. I haven't checked that out, but it's...
Sorry, I'm asking all the hard questions now.
I know, I've been too busy to even look. I just know there's a competition, and the owner of this house has let me stay here for a couple of nights to experience it. And I think, you know, the first thing you do when you drive up and you step out and you look at this massive view, you just stand there watching the waves all day long. And we're hoping to see some whales, but nothing yet, but fingers crossed.
It looks beautiful. I might have to enter under a different name because I might not be allowed to
make a perfect writer's retreat here.
That sounds good. So what's the difference between your women's fiction or your general fiction and your rural romances? How do you think they're the same kind of genre? What do you think about the differences between the two genres?
It's I don't know. The rural, I think, is a bit more, I tend to have two main characters, you know, the leading couple, whereas with women's fiction or life lit, where I've merged two, you know, it can be two friends or it can be family members. You know, it's a very, it's more about connections between friends and family, whereas my rurals were always sort of a couple, you know, as a man and a guy, and it's romancy, as well as having real issues. You know, I still tackled, you know, rural depression and suicide and really hard-hitting issues in, you know, because I was still writing about real life. So in that respect, they're not too far apart. We're still tackling the same issues that people are struggling with every day, but it's just a slightly different setting. You know, the life lit books can, you know, I can set it in the city, in the country, wherever. I think there's a bit more plot, you know, a few more characters. Sometimes I'll have 5 characters. So whereas with the rurals, mainly 2 with a few backups.
Excellent. I think that's a misconception, isn't there? There's this big misconception around a lot of people who don't even read romance or rural romance, who think, oh, they're just light and fluffy. But you're right. You have issues in your rural romances. I have issues in my rural romances. So do other people. And, you know, the difference, I think, between the women's fiction genre and the rural is exactly what you said. It's the relationships in romance are between a couple, whereas the relationships in a women's fiction or a general fiction book are, you know, all the other types of relationships that we explore on a day-to-day, or we experience on a day-to-day basis. So this is a great title for this book, Tiny White Lies. I mean, I think I heard last year when I was actually listening to Michael Robotham talking about his book, which was about someone who, I'm trying to remember if she said, you would know this because you've read it as well, whether she can't lie or she can tell when other people are lying. Do you remember which one?
When others are lying, yes.
Yeah. Anyway, and he was very interesting, though. He was talking about like how many lies we actually each tell, you know, every day that we don't even realize we're telling somehow. We just kind of, you know,
sometimes we tell ourselves lies, you know.
Yeah, definitely. So where did this, I mean, the title, did it come before you started the book? Did it come while you were writing the book, or did it come at the end?
It come towards the end. I mean, I had sort of called it off the grid. You know, so I find I can't start a book unless I know a title. Like I want to be able to call it something, you know, I'm working on this, not just book 6 or book 10. Yeah. I like to give it a name. So it was sort of called Off the Grid. And then when we were workshopping titles, we came up with Little White Lies, because really the book is essentially about not quite telling the truth, but you're not telling a lie either. You're just kind of withholding information and, you know, little bits like that. So, but Little White Lies was already taken and it was going to be out soon on a book, so we had to change it. And we got to Tiny White Lies, and we kind of think it fits because Little White Lies feels a bit more sinister, like, you know, they're really naughty, lies, whereas Tiny just seem like the little innocent little ones we tell.
Yeah, no, that's cool. I probably should have asked you this before, because we were talking, you automatically talked about the setting, and we saw the beautiful place where you are. So much of this book, it starts in Perth, and then all the characters go to a farm on the south coast of Western Australia. I know the answer. It's based on a real place, but you made a fictional town or a fictional place, did you? Or did you actually? I'm trying to remember now. I've got a terrible memory. Yeah. Anyway, that doesn't matter. It's based on Bremer Bay, isn't it?
It's based sort of in Bremer Bay, but the farm I've sort of made up. So that's in my mind. I kind of know the area. It's between some of the beaches that we go to, and you've got a full drive to get there, and it's quite rugged and we love it. And it's very isolated. So I've sort of created a farm there. There's some farms as you drive into Bremer, and I sort of made it to what I needed for the book. But towards the end of the book, the characters all head into Bremer Bay, and, you know, they go to the museum, they see some of the beaches and the lookout. So it's always nice to showcase off what places have. And I try to do that in all my books. The Outback Heart was set in Hyden with Wave Rock, and we've got so many great spots in WA, and people love reading about their towns and places they've been to. I'm just trying to support WA.
So, that answered my question, which was kind of how important is setting for you? It's important in this book because you need it for the plot, but generally for you, setting is quite important, would you say, in your fiction?
Definitely, and maybe that's come from starting with rural, where, you know, almost the setting is a character in itself, and I still have that. You know, I love, I'm inspired by the landscape, and so I'd very much like to set books where you can feel the setting. I have a book into the future where I'd like to go to Karajini and write about there, because that's such a stunning place. So, you know,
so you're doing the old writing trick of choosing a holiday and then deciding in retrospect, I'm going to write a book about that place so I can write it off on tax, aren't you? We're on to you, Fiona. There's a lot of authors that do that. Not mentioning names.
I just wish I could go overseas, you know, but not now.
I'm very curious about Karajini too. I've heard it's beautiful, and hopefully I'll be getting up there reasonably soon too, actually.
We should make a writer's retreat.
And so we should. So in this book, you've got a number of issues. We talked about issues before about, and some of the ones in this book are body image issues, online bullying, marital relations, and, you know, what's going on in a marriage after you've been together for quite a few times. There's health issues in there. There's that big hot one of screens, and, you know, anyone has kids, basically it's something you think about a lot these days. So what I want to know is, did these issues come after you sort of decided to write the book Set Away, or what came first? Was it the issues that came first, or the idea of a family going on holiday? How do you go about writing the issues?
I think first of all, I knew I wanted to do something about teens with technology and going away on an internet-free holiday. So that was the bones. And then from there, you know, I sort of worked out I needed two families. So I went friends with Ash and Nikki. And then also they needed their own stories and their own backstory. Like, it couldn't just be about the kids. And that sort of morphed as it went. It grew along, and I think straight up I always thought Ash was going to be sort of a single mum dealing with, you know, her own issues with a daughter, and as well as Nikki. You know, it kind of grew from there and built up. But the bones of it were thanks to my two teenagers that, you know, gave me great ideas.
Well, I'm going to ask you a question for any parents then. How do you manage your kids' screen time?
Badly, I'd say. Mine are at boarding school, so a lot of the time...
So you let someone else manage it?
Yeah, it's the supervisors managing. You know, usually they've got a hand in their phones, you know, for bedtime, so they can't have it during the night, and which is great. But when they come home, they're like, well, we're on holidays, Mum. Can we have it, you know? It's on holidays. So it is pretty hard, but we're lucky being out in the country that my kids do love getting off their phones, going outside, hopping on their motorbikes, jumping in their cars, going for a drive. So pretty lucky that they naturally sort of have time off from the screen. So
cool. I just want to make a quick reminder to everyone too, because I'm hogging the airspace and asking Fiona questions now, but you might have burning questions that you'd like to ask Fiona. So please, you can access the chat down the bottom. You just click on chat, and if you type some questions in there, ask her really hard, horrible ones, okay? And then, you know, she'll answer them at the end, and I'll enjoy watching her answer them. So I want to know, do you think it's important for fiction books to have these issues, like any type of issues, or do you, as well as providing a fun escape, like, or do you think sometimes it's okay for a book just to be about fun?
Well, you know, depending on what you want to write. I enjoy writing stories with real life issues, but I still like to tie it up and have a happy ending, because that's the kind of book I like to read. I like to feel satisfied and happy when I get to the last page. If I don't, then I feel a little bit ripped off. So myself personally, I like, you know, I don't mind if there's some harsh elements and sad times, etc. But as long as the ending is pretty good and neatly tied up, I'm happy. So I tend to write that, and I like tackling some of the harder issues if I can.
Do you find okay. I just
Right.
Some authors say, like, I've found, I guess, that when you explore issues, I don't necessarily choose an issue to start with, but they come up and then I learn about them myself, and so it challenges my own thinking about the certain things. So do you find that sometimes that you change your opinion on certain things that you're writing about?
Definitely. I mean, that's the great part about research, because, you know, first of all, you might know your character needs to have a disease or something that's going to tie in with your plot story. So, you know, as you know, Rach, we often back and forth trying to figure out what someone can have that will work. It's all got to fit into your story. And then once you work out what that is, you know, there's lots of research and trying to understand it so you can write about it. And I did a lot of research for the Vietnam vet book and learned so much, and that was really fascinating. I really enjoyed learning about that and talking with some vets and just, you know, hearing the real guts of all the stories, I suppose. And I think hearing all that allows me to put that into a story better, make a better experience for the reader.
And sometimes it's a question of not, you know, having too much to put in, isn't there? And selecting what actually is needed for the story.
Exactly. You can spend days and days researching for just one sentence sometimes, just to get it right in context, or just so you understand it to be able to write, you know, even just a word, a paragraph. Yeah.
So for Tiny White Lies, can you tell us about some of the research you did for that?
Yes, there was research on anxiety. My own daughter suffered a bit of quite a lot of anxiety through her younger years, and she's, you know, learnt to manage it. But I did a little bit more research on that as well, because you just, I don't know, if you're going to write about it, you really want to know all aspects of it. What else did I do? Oh gosh. Even researched a bit on Bremer, even though I come here often, you know, I still was having to have a look, and, you know, I brought up Google and I scrolled the coast trying to figure out whereabouts I was, just in my mind, where I wanted the farm. So you do all sorts of random things when you're trying to write a book.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I think it's next time I write a book, I reckon, next time I start, I'm actually going to keep a list of all the things that I Google while I'm writing, because some of the things you don't even think about, do you? It just comes up while you're writing. So, and it can be, I mean, the weird things that writers, you know, Google.
That would be a great blog, you know, if you listed everything we Google, because sometimes you can put in the most random things, and it'd be very interesting to see what exactly we look up for the whole duration of a book.
Exactly, because it can be tiny little things, like you said. I mean, my recent book, I think I looked up ghosts, I looked up certain foods, I looked up date rape drugs, some state date rape drugs, some like, and sometimes it would be like tiny little things, and other times it would be deep. But yeah, it was some, like, you worry about people seeing a writer's search and history sometimes, because you know, we can look up how do you murder someone, why, you know, all these different things. So yes, but you did a good job in this one. I definitely felt like I was in Bremer. I've never been to Bremer, but I can picture it now. I want to go. I'm going to enter that competition. So we've done the research. You've got two main characters, and then so we've got Ashley and Nikki. Told you that's right, isn't it? My memory's terrible. And then we've got Nikki's husband, and Nikki has 2 kids, and Ashley has 1 kid. And then there's a bit of a romantic love interest, and you've got to have that, you know, lovely love interest there, who owns the farm down south, and his son. They're the main characters, I think. Did you have a favourite one that you enjoyed writing? And if so, why?
I think Ash. I loved Ash. She just was a bit more down to earth, and I could just imagine her with her, you know, gorgeous red hair and freckles, and I just felt for her a bit more. She kind of lost her way, I guess, you know, and now her husband's gone, and she's trying to figure out who she is again, and realising that she can try anything, you know, she has a go at surfing and all these things. So she's the one I sort of connected with the most, and I enjoyed writing it. Maybe because she got to find romance, I don't know. I do enjoy that journey, and you know, she had a lot of self-discovery, sort of, you know, however you explain it, but she had a lot to process in liking Luke, even though her husband had, you know, 8 months ago, not long ago, passed. But there's all that emotional baggage that comes with it, like feeling wrong to have, you know, feelings for someone else. But even though she's lost a husband, it's a lot of a very confusing state to be in, I suppose, for her. Yeah,
so she had a big, a happy ending, but a big journey to go through and lots of emotion, which you wrote really well. So writing is not your only job. You are an amazing superwoman who does quite a few things. You're on a few committees, do book club. You've got 2 kids, as you said, who live away, but you often visit them and drive back and forth. You've got 2 jobs kind of thing. What is your other job, and how do you balance it with your writing? Which one do you fit in?
Well, I think my farmhand job I think that was a passion I had from a young age. I mean, that kind of inspired my first book, spending weekends out on my uncle's farm. It was where we had so much fun as kids, you know, where you could run around and drive around and explore and build teepees. And I loved the machinery, loved everything about farming. So when this job came up, 6-7 years ago, I don't know, I've been with them a while now, and they said, you know, will you drive a header for us? And I jumped at it, and then the header job became a seeding job, became pretty much full time, you know, when I'm available. So it works out really good because I can juggle my writing and the farm work. I dedicate seeding and harvest to the boys, and then in between, you know, I've got the book stuff, and I can sort of pick and choose my days, which works for both of us. And, you know, I love the farm work. It's a great time to get out, change of scenery. You know, I've got time to think, plot the next book. And I really enjoy that. I think being an outside person, you know, having to sit inside and write can kind of get congestive, can't say the right word, but, you know, it's nice to get outdoors, outside, run off a little bit of steam, then come back in and write. And I sometimes find when I'm doing my writing stage, I'll sometimes go to work 2 days a week, and the rest of, you know, 3 days, 2 days I might have writing, and I will struggle to write 2,000 words in a whole day. Yet when I come home from work and sit down after tea at night, in those 2 hours I can write 2,000 words. So I tend to just find it's easy if I go to work, come home and write at night. I don't know why it's better, maybe because there's less shiny things to play with at night. Everyone's, you know, gone to sleep. There's nothing happening on social media, so therefore I can focus. But during the day, I find it really hard to stay just switched into writing mode. There's so much faffing and procrastinating.
You are amazing, because I would be dead after a day of doing any kind of farm work or any kind of work. If I have to do anything during the day, then that's a day where I don't write, because my brain is just too dead. So I take my hat off to you. But you've got something there, I think, because social media is so distracting as a writer. It's part of your job in a way. You have to be on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, and I'm sure, like me, you quite enjoy a lot of that. But at the same time, it does take time away. Whereas, because we're in the Western Australia and the rest of the country is 2 hours or sometimes 3 hours ahead, I guess that means that, yes, when you're writing at night, most people are gone to bed, so they're not posting social media. So it's probably a perfect time. If only I could stay awake that long. So I want to know, well, I already know, but other people might like to know this. And please, guys, ask some questions, because I don't want to be the only one asking the questions. I feel like I'm hogging the space. So go on. The first person who asks a question, you get the thumbs up from me. I don't know if I'm allowed to offer prizes or not. Anyway, so what is your writing process? Are you a plotter, which is someone, for anyone who doesn't know what I'm talking about, someone who kind of outlines their book and knows where they're going from the start? Well, the other kind of writer that we often hear about is a pantser, which is someone who just basically sits down at the computer and starts, has no idea what they're writing about, who the characters are, and just goes for it. I'm pretty sure everyone's somewhere on the spectrum. Where are you on the spectrum from plotter to pantser, and how do you write a book?
Definitely a plotter. I'm someone who, when I go to the city, I have my whole day planned out. Like, I've got to be there, pick up that, go there, go there, go there. So I'll write a book exactly the same. I'll think about it until I've got it worked out in my head how the book's going to go, and then I'll write my synopsis. So that'll be a 3, 4, 5 page outline of how the book's going to go, sort of outline the characters, start, middle and ending, and then I'll start from chapter 1 and work my way through. So pretty much know how the book's going to go. Sometimes you'll get halfway through the book and either come up with a better idea, or a character will sort of lead you down another path. They decide that they want to tell you that they like bungee jumping or something. So, sometimes you've got to be prepared to, change the story just a little, but I tend to stick to the plan until it comes to structural edits.
Structural edits. Do you want to tell us a bit about structural edits? I didn't have that as a question, but for anyone who is interested in the process, so obviously we write a book and then we set it off. And what do you mean by structural edits?
Well, they're the edits that make you cry as an author. So we send our first draft off, and that's when the publisher will read through it and say yay or nay, more or less. And they usually try to break it to you gently. They tell you the things they like, and then they list all the things they don't. And that's usually when authors will probably have a meltdown and usually get upset and think, oh my gosh, we're terrible at writing. Why are we doing this? And then you sort of reread it a few times and then you go, oh, they've got a point. And then you start working through your book with the structural edits, and you can see how it really is improving the story. And you don't have to do all their requested changes. As an author, you still can fight for the scenes you like. But that's usually the very daunting part of the writing process.
Totally agree. I hate structural edits. They're such hard work and it's just awful. You just want to be perfect the first time. Why can't it be perfect the first time and then you can just move on to write another book? So I'm really hoping that people will ask some questions. I've got a few fun ones here, but we have got a little bit more time. So if anyone's got some questions, please type them in the chat. Just need to go to the bottom. I'm sure I can come up with some other ones, but I'm going to, one more big one before I get to my fun ones. When you write your books, and particularly this one, since this is what we're talking about, Tiny White Lies, did you hit any snags while writing this book? So you talked about your outline, how you kind of knew where it's going, and then you said sometimes there's, someone tells you something that, a character comes along and they say, I like bungee jumping or something. Were there any times in this book where you stalled, and what was the reason?
It wasn't too bad. I did feel like the middle, going through the kids with their boredom, and like I kind of got with it, but sort of that's what they do, you know. They just sit there and whinge, and so that was hard to write because I was bored with the kids, you know. Already, I just wanted to say, go play. That wasn't too bad.
It's too real.
It did get changed. Luke had a daughter, but we wrote her out of the book, so that was a bit of a change.
So were there two? Did Luke have? So Luke has a son in the current book. Did he have a daughter and a son, or did he just have a daughter?
No, he had a daughter and a son, but the daughter had passed away. So I had all this theme, and that is the reason, sort of, you know, why his wife left, etc.
Oh, wow.
But I felt I had enough drama happening in the book, so yeah, we wrote her out of the book. So,
okay, I've got another question then. I've got another question, because when you read this book, peoples, you will find there's a special bench that is a memorial bench for his grandma, I think it is. Is there his mother's grandma? Was that originally for his daughter?
It was. And because then we wrote her out of it, and I was like, oh, well, I will just make the bench the grandma's bench, you know? So that was a little bit of a tweak, but...
So this is where you get the behind the scenes look, guys, on what actually happens in a book, and you know what you see at the end is not necessarily what us authors start with. So I've got a few fun things, and come on, guys, questions. Do I have to give away a book? Ask some questions. You got to type them in the bottom there. I'm sure I haven't asked everything. So what snacks do you love eating while you're writing, or drink?
I usually have a cuppa on the go and a Tim Tam. Or chocolate. I like a bit of dark chocolate. The sea salt caramel goes great with a coffee. For some reason, if I make a coffee, I start craving, you know, chocolate. So it's really bad. I'm sure I put on kilos trying to write a book because, you know, it's a form of procrastination. You write a paragraph and you're like, oh, I'm going to reward myself with a coffee and chocolate. But you tend to do that too many times during the day. So
I know, it's a problem. And so, what's your favourite book you've ever read?
Gosh, I don't have a favourite. I have lots. You know, from Harry Potter to Vampire Academy to Michael Robotham's Evie series. Like, oh, that's great. As well as Jane Harper's The Lost Man. There's just so many brilliant books out there. You know, they stay with you until you read another brilliant one, and then that's your next favourite. So it's just never ending, really. There's so many great books out there that need to be enjoyed.
Of course, you got that question wrong. You're supposed to say my book. No, just joking.
No special prize for me.
No. So what is your favourite movie? I know you're a big movie watcher. You love your movies. It's a good way to relax. You have to pick a favourite. Come on, what's your favourite movie of all time? Or is that easier than a book?
I have nearly every rom-com movie in DVD that you could, you know, ever imagine. So they're a favourite. From, what have we got? Bend It Like Beckham, The Wedding Planner. Oh gosh, there's heaps of them. Pride and Prejudice, like the list goes on. I think The Proposal, all of those, I've got all of those. But my biggest one that I love, I think, would have to be The Goonies, because growing up as kids, it was our favourite movie ever. And I've lost count of how many, I think I know it word for word. So every time that comes on, I just feel like a kid again and absolutely love it.
Okay, while we're on the movies, what book of yours would you like to be made a movie if I was a director and was offering you a deal right now? Or producer, whatever.
Whichever one Chris Hemsworth could be in.
Any of your rural heroes, definitely, probably.
I don't know. I would like to see a rural done, mainly because, you know, I don't think there's enough movies out there that depict the country lifestyle, and I think that would look great on the big screen. You know, you only got to see Farmer Wants a Wife and how the TV show is great with all their shots and the sunrises, and it's just magic. Very romantic scenery. So
great. Well, maybe one day we'll see it. Celebrity crush.
There's too many. There's too many. Like I say, you know, Chris Hemsworth's up there, Ryan Reynolds. Gosh, anyway, I've just mental blank at the moment.
That's okay. They're good ones. We'll give you them. That's a tick. Okay. Questions, peoples. Come on. I think everyone doesn't know how to type. Come on. Typing questions. Okay. So, 2 more questions for me. Print, digital, or audio books? What's your go-to?
All 3. I have an audio book on the go, and I've got my Kindle on the go and a paper version. So they all come in handy. You know, I'll read the paper when I run out of the paper book. I go to my Kindle because I can't get access to bookshops. I'm in the middle of nowhere. So that is great to access when I need a book. But I'm also in the car a lot or on the tractor. 13, 14 hours a day during seeding gives you lots of time to power through audio books. So that's usually the times when I hammer some books out, which is great.
Okay, awesome. I've seen that I'm an idiot. There's plenty of questions. I just haven't been seeing them. So all good. Sorry, I'm very pushy. Can you give us a hint about what you're writing next, and then we'll go over to the questions? Okay,
so I've called it. It'll change, no doubt. I'm still waiting for Rachael to come up with the new title for it because she's brilliant at naming books. Seeing as she goes Secrets Between Friends, that title. This one I'm calling it The Stolen Memories. And this book is dedicated to the wonderful Rachael and Anthea because we went on a writer's retreat down Dunsborough and brainstormed this book, which I'm nearly finished writing. So that's been very exciting. And then the one after that will be set at Karajini. So
I love the title Stolen Lives. Stolen Memories. I think it's a really cool title. I don't have heard that before. All right. I'm going to hand over to Emma Kate to ask some of the questions that people have been asking.
Lovely. So you just asked the one which a few people have asked.
Okay.
What are you writing next, Fiona? We did have somebody who wanted to know whether you've already started plotting that book out. So, and what the process has been like. How have you been plotting it so far?
Well, yeah, that was great. Like going to our writers' retreat, is so helpful having like Anthea and Rach who've written books and understand how to plot. And when I get stuck, they're great to throw ideas, and it's just wonderful to have that. And got that down. And I must say, I went looking online for photos of my characters because sometimes I like to have a visual, inspiration. And I came across this photo of this gorgeous girl. She had scars, massive, scars on her face. And I was like, that's it, my character's going to have these scars. And then that morphed into this massive backstory and became the bones of the book. So you just never know when you're going to find inspiration.
Mm-hmm. Michelle wants to know about your cover. Did you pick it for this book?
No, they do ask you, what would you like to see on the cover? And of course I said, a beach. And as close to Bremer as possible. I sent them a few photos, but they found this one and they sent it to me. They had a few others. Some were like a bonfire on the beach and a billy on it. And then there was a dark one with like a hut and lights, and you could see a fire, but that was quite dark and we wanted something a bit lighter. And this was bright and, light. And I looked at the photo and went, yeah, that could pass as one of the beaches here. So I was pretty rapt.
And Thea wants to know, what was the last tiny white lie that you told, Fiona?
Probably one to my kids, they wanted to do something, so I told them a lie so they wouldn't do it, I would say.
Isabella wants to know, who would you cast in the film of Tiny White Lies?
Well, Luke's rugged and handsome. Like I say, Ryan Reynolds, someone with a bit of stubble. I think he would work wonderful. And much the same for Chris. He's pretty, but a bit more smoother. He's a city guy, so he probably keeps freshly shaved and all of that. I'm not sure on Chris. I haven't thought too hard about him.
Paula wants to know, when you're making major structural changes in your novels, I won't mention what Paula mentioned in case it's a spoiler for anybody. Is it difficult to sort out the ramifications of the changes that you've made?
Can't quite figure out what he's meaning there with the middle missing bit.
Oh, so when you're making a drastic a plot change, for example, a death or a birth or something, would it be what? How do you sort of reconcile the ramifications there?
It's pretty tricky, but I don't know. Get through it somehow.
What other genres would you like to write in?
Okay.
I definitely enjoyed writing my YA series. I like the action. I love reading fast-paced books. So if I'm reading a book that's got a lot of description, I find I skip to the dialogue. So I do like YA because it's fast and it's got a lot of dialogue, interaction and action. I love reading Matthew Riley's books as well. There's always something going on, Indiana Jones sort of style. But I don't know if I'd be any good at writing that, but yeah.
And the last question that I've got here is who would be your all-time favorite author? That's a tough one.
Oh, Rachael Johns. You owe me 50. Overall, I could nearly say J.K. Rowling, because Harry Potter, I was working as a teacher's aide and the teacher had selected Harry Potter to read to the kids. And I think I was the most engaged person there. Like, I was just absorbed by the story and then went and read the whole series. And that kicked off, like, I had this time period in my life where I didn't read. I forgot about reading and the joy of reading. And it was that moment in that classroom that I guess it all came back, and haven't stopped since then.
Lovely, thank you. So I might hand back to you both for any final comments or questions that you have before I unmute everybody and let them join me in thanking you for this brilliant discussion.
Thank you, everyone, for your fantastic questions. Fiona, is there anything you want, just final words about the book or anything you'd like to say?
No, just thank you all for tuning in and joining me at this lovely, lovely spot. I wish you could all be here with me because it's so magical. Got another night, so I'm off shortly to another event, but it's lovely that you all took time to tune in. And thank you, Rach and Emma. It's been lovely.
Thank you. It was fun. Got me out of cooking dinner. My husband's doing that.
Lovely. Thank you both. Thank you both so much, and thank you everybody for joining us. I'm going to take you off mute now so that you can, there we go, you're all off mute so you can join me in thanking Rachael and Fiona. Woohoo! Thanks everybody. Have a lovely night.
Thank you.